Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm your host, Eric Matei, joined today by Dr. Chris Lieven for a really insightful conversation of clinical trials in private practice, why you should consider it and how to get started. Now, y'all, I tell you, the backstory of this actually goes back to a conversation that Dr. Lieven and I had at Arvo earlier this year, 2023. And, and by the way, Dr. Lieven and I go way back, some of which we'll jump into it in the conversation here. But it was in the context of kind of catching up on things. And he's seen all the cool things we're doing with private practices. And he said, Eric, what do you think about this? And it just really struck me and stuck with me. And I'm so excited and honored, Dr. Lieven, to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm excited to talk about this and really excited to be on your podcast.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and kind of kick things off with, for those who may not know who you are. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself? Your eye care journey. What inspired you to pursue optometry and all those great things?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a similar story than a lot of people. The eye care was the only provider that really I wasn't scared to go to as a kid. There was no shots. It wasn't intimidating, and so I really set on that long ago. And a lot of people ask me early in their careers, what type of job they should go after, and I tell them, what, it's a journey, like you just said. Rarely do I have friends that landed their first forever job day one. It is a journey more so. And I had a number of roles early in my career. I was an optometrist in the United States Air Force. I was in an optometric private practice, 3 doctors plus me in 2 locations. I was in ophthalmology, anterior seg practice. And finally, I landed on optometric education. So since the year 2000, the last 23 years, I've been at Southern College of Optometry. The majority of that time was in patient care and clinical administration. Most recently, though, earlier this year, I became the director of research at SCO.
So really fascinating story. And I would encourage everyone, reach out to Dr. Lieven, go check out his CV and the great work he's doing. Really fascinating stuff. So let's jump into it and talk about clinical trials. Before we went live, before we hit record here, we were talking about kind of like this journey, the long journey that treatment has before it's there in the office. So just kind of lay it on us, educate us about clinical trials, what the process looks like and all that stuff.
Right. One of the, in some way, shape, or form, for over the last 20 years, I've involved in some form of research, and I'll walk you through some of the options that practitioners have. And it was really, it's not that I had any more of an inquisitive mind than anybody else. It's not that I had any different background compared to everybody else. It was really just to spice up day-to-day work. I never wanted to be in a position where I was doing the same thing over and over and over and become bored. And so this was a different way to practice, a different opportunity to see things either each week, each month, different times of the year, really just to spice it up. And so that's really why I stuck with it. What a lot of people don't know, though, is there is tremendous opportunity for all practitioners. It doesn't matter what type of setting you're in. There's opportunity there, and I think it's really an untold story. So I'm glad we're having the opportunity to pull back the curtain on this, because it's rewarding in spicing up your practice. It's also rewarding in seeing and getting your hands on early things before they even come to market. So now you have experience before anybody else. And then actually it can be financially rewarding too for the practitioner or practice. So if I kind of laid out the options, let me walk you through what I would probably consider the three pillars of research. And none of them are better than any other. They're just different. So on one extreme is probably what most people would come to mind as soon as you said the word clinical research. And that is complete independent research. In other words, I have an idea and I'm going to design a project to answer a question. I'm going to get it approved. I'm going to enroll patients. I'm going to see patients. I'm going to analyze results, and then I'm going to disseminate and share my information. That's traditionally what research has always been. That's probably the most intimidating, though, because it's all on you. It's your idea, it's your design, it's your workload, it's your analysis, it's your publication, presentation, all the above. And so I think because that's what jumps to front of mind initially when the word research is mentioned, most people say, okay, no, that's just not
Right.
me. Too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. The complete opposite of that is an opportunity where I think a lot of people can be involved, and that is sponsored clinical trials. And so it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a medical device, uh, a pair of glasses, a contact lens solution, a artificial tear, or we could talk pharma. It's a new drug coming to market. That's going through the FDA phases of trial before approval and then on the market. In those type of settings, our industry partners will seek out help to assist them with these clinical trials. The nice thing here is that all the workload is done by our industry partner. They've designed the project. They've created how you document your results, what types of patients are enrolled, the timing of everything. All you are the worker bee. You don't have to write it, you don't have to analyze it, you don't have to disseminate the information. It's all done by the industry partner.
Sure.
And
Right.
so then the intimidation factor is completely gone. All you have to do is, number one, when you see the project, say, oh, yeah, my practice sees these kind of patients. And so I believe I can enroll 10, 5, 50, whatever it is. And so if that jives with the person running the project, then they'll bring you on, train you, supply you with any materials that you need, training, what have you. All you need in your practice is a system. So you need somebody like an investigator who can see the patients and deliver the data that's needed. And you probably need some staff member where some portion of their job is just organization to help you schedule patients, to help you maintain logs and maintain the records. Somebody who can just be your secondhand person to do all the other stuff besides seeing actual patients. And that's pretty much all you need. And I found that industry partners are actually looking for practices who are willing and able to do this so that they have a diversity of data, that it's not all coming from academic centers and hospitals and
Sure.
optometry and
Yeah.
ophthalmology groups, that they get a mix, and private practices could easily plug into that.
Absolutely. And you know, Dr. Lieven, it's fascinating right now. As we're recording this, we're just coming off the heels of Vision Expo West. Amazing to see all of the products, all the innovation, all the devices, right? And now next week, I know we'll all be coming together here in New Orleans
Right.
for American Academy of Optometry 2023 big event. And you know, all of the research and everyone coming together there, industry coming together there. And I tell you, to your point, with such a sizable and growing public health need and all of this innovation and scope of care, ways to serve the patient, I really think it's an exciting time for those that want to get involved in this. It's remarkable. So to kind of rewind a little bit, though, I think it's really important how you kind of opened that kind of high level definition of clinical trials, but you said, you know, the world of white papers and deep clinical research, that's I mean, sure, it's part of clinical research, but you know, where you are the decision maker, you are securing the financing and the grants and everything through and through the process, the reporting, um, getting it to a peer reviewed journal. Well, that's certainly a really exciting world, and perhaps we could have another episode around that, Dr. Levens. I think for those out there
Sure.
that wanted to get into that, we could get into the nitty gritty there. But I think for many of our viewers out there who would want to be early adopters of new technology, I think it's fascinating how you mentioned there's some great ways to differentiate a practice, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if you can be the first in a market to have access to to a contact lens because you're part of those trials, or some sort of new pharmaceutical treatment, what have you. Um, but something definitely I think that I took away regarding, if you want to go into it, kind of what's the lift there.
Sure.
Exciting conversation as the light just kind of went dim here. It's all this energy between us, Dr. Lieven.
Yeah.
My ring lamp just went out. But anyhow, it all ties back to process. And I like how you kind of identified that the process, don't really worry about it, right? Because the industry partner who's coming to you as the investigator, they're going to have those processes kind of all spelled out. So the
That's
important
right.
thing for you is to, I think, perhaps dig into your practice, and maybe we can kind of start talking about that. Like, if you're wondering if you have the opportunity in your practice, what kind of things can you look into perhaps in your practice data to see if you have some of those patients in your patient pool?
So when an immediate question that I get fielded with about this whole topic is, all right, I understand what you said. I do have interest in doing this, but what's the first step to get out of the
Sure.
gates? And honestly, like it is in pretty much all of life, it's just raising your hand. And so let's say next week at Academy, you can go to the exhibit hall and visit and meet people and just say, hey, I'm a practitioner, I'm an associate in practice, I'm an owner of a practice, what have you, all the above. And I'm interested in at some point getting involved in clinical trials. Who can I speak with? And you'll get a contact and just introduce yourself. Say I'm not done this before, but I'm working to get organized, and I'd like to be a site at some point. And they'll put you down on a list. It may not happen tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow, but you'll set up a meeting with somebody, and you'll just eventually get noticed. And like also anything in life, so long as you do good work, they'll keep coming back to you. So you just got to break down the barrier, break down door one, and then you're off to the races. And so I would encourage people to talk to lots of groups, from medical device to pharma, because there will come a time where you're called or emailed and say, okay, here's a project that we have, and we'd like to see if you're interested. And I've looked at projects and say, wow, I'm interested, but I don't have the patient base to support this condition that they need patients enrolled in. I just say, well, no, thank you on this one. Conversely,
Sure.
there's other ones that are such low-hanging fruit and simple and quick, that I think it would blow people's minds how fast and quick some projects can be done, and how easy it can be done.
Yeah, and I think also how much fun it can be done, right? Because
Yep,
Dr. Lievens, you and I go way back to
that's right.
where I cut my teeth working with a global leader in eye care,
Hmm.
and all the innovation coming out there. And I remember being a part of trials as far as part of helping implement with the investigators, and it was
Right,
a lot of fun for doctors and their staff, right?
right.
And I think now more than ever, some really exciting ways also to differentiate the practice
You
in the
got it.
process. And I think particularly when we're looking at this, whether you are medically oriented and you want to be known as that doctor providing the scope of medical care, well, think for a moment about all the centers of influence, all those referring doctors, the internists, these other specialists who look to you as being the specialist. If you have that cutting edge pharmaceutical or treatment approach. And then likewise, other side of the coin, if you're more into specialty care and contact lenses and cool stuff like that, that's
Right.
more, public facing, some really great ways. You can leverage your digital marketing strategy and a lot of ways you can get the word out in your community, differentiating the practice. So let's talk a little bit now, assuming there's a few listeners out there that are kind of like, oh, Eric, Dr. Lievens, this sounds pretty far out. So to your point, hey, get involved, raise your hand. And if you're
Yep.
going to a big event like Academy here, or I know there's a slew of great state events all around the country coming up here
Sure.
in the months to come. But anywhere you go, if you want to do it, raise your hand, because the opportunities are out there. But let's kind of take a moment and toss out considerations around infrastructure,
Yeah.
standard operating procedures, equipment, right? Because that's another thing too. I mean, not everyone is cut out has the infrastructure and the equipment to be able to support everything. So maybe comment a little bit on that.
Sure. Yeah. So before I go down that road, let me bring you up to the third pillar, which I didn't mention yet, which is kind of in between the the more intimidating complete independent research and then the other extreme, which are sponsored clinical trials. There is a middle ground. And that is for depending on the company you're working with, investigator initiated grant, and investigator initiated trial, investigator initiated study, and this is kind of the in between. This is where, for example, it could be a product that's on the market already. So pick your favorite contact lens, let's say, and the company on their end is like, wow, we believe our product does X and is delivering X. We just don't have data on that yet. So maybe we can work with a practice or group of practices who can design a study in collaboration with us. It's their work, but it's a question that we want answered. So
Sure.
we'll give them the autonomy to design it, to enroll patients, to analyze the results and publish it, but we are going to fund it. So it's different from the independent research, which is all on somebody, including the funding. It's kind of a middle ground where it's still a lot of individual work, but it's in collaboration with an industry funder, and there's dollars and cents here, because I think that is another big unknown. So Eric, you talk to a lot of practices and practitioners in eye care.
Sure.
For most of us, gone are the days, a few decades ago, where all we saw were private pay patients. We're in the world of third party coverage for the majority of patients that we see. So, just ballpark in your area or the doctors that you see, if somebody's in a practice and pretty much they see all vision plans, what's an approximate take home on a patient? Not glasses, just for an exam. I don't know, so like $40 or something like that? Or am I in the
Oh
ballpark?
yeah. Yeah. There's
Something
absolutely
like
a
that.
range. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I'm
40,
just going to pull
60,
up.
75. You're like,
All
absolutely.
right, so I'm just going to pick a number. I'm just going to say $50, we'll say. And so I remember when I was in early practice all by myself, I was seeing about 300 patients a month. Is typically where my average was. Some months a little bit less, some months a little bit more. So $50 times 300, and I'll just say I did that for 12 months, and so that's $180,000. I've been involved in a lot of trials where let's do this middle one, because this is the one that I'm more responsible for, where I'm designing the research study in collaboration with a funder. I'm setting the budget. I'm asking for funding for whatever it is whatever question we're trying to answer. And it could be as simple as a 1 month study where I see the patient twice. And it could be when I see them twice, it could be 15 minutes each. See, this is much less than a comprehensive eye exam. I may be checking visual acuity, how their tear breakup time looks, what their contact lens looks like, and then the same thing a month later, whatever it is. It's commonplace to see, and it could be as small as, let's say, 30 subjects. So I'm seeing 30 patients for 15 minutes each twice. And it is absolutely conceivable for funding to be somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. So I could duplicate
For
all.
for one 30 subject
Yes.
study.
And I've almost either hit 50% of my yearly income or doubled my yearly income with just one study that took 1 month, and see the patient for two 15-minute visits. And so that's where the message is: there's low hanging fruit out there, and there's opportunity out there that people they just don't know. And so so the big message of the take home today is, let's share this information, because
Absolutely.
it's impactful.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, and yes, so we connect with doctors all over North America, and Dr. Lieven, it is absolutely fascinating to hear of everyone's vision, particularly those that are looking to get into practice ownership or in these
Right.
like kind of hitting this growth trajectory where it's kind of like it's time for me to really take out over the world and turn this practice into the ultimate that I've always dreamed of. And it's fascinating to hear everyone's vision across the spectrum, and to consider that there are companies R&D in all of these lanes, right? Whether you are medical, right? And
Yeah.
hey, I'm medical. I want to have an inner city medical practice serving an underserved community, right? Straight medical. whatever the case may be, you have to think of all of the tech, all of the R&D, all the research that goes into those pharmaceuticals being available, right?
Yep.
Likewise, specialty contact lens. I mean, what's going on with myopia and all the innovation there and ways to treat
Yep.
that. And here at time of recording this, I having adolescent children and seeing them and their peers, how many of them are struggling with myopia. Again, there, all of the research, innovation, and funding for investigators, which anyone can be, right? I mean, going
You
back to
got
it,
it.
how you kind of started the program, like raise your hand, get involved.
Yep.
So, well, Dr. Lievens, look, any closing before we kind of
Yeah.
wrap it up, and I definitely want you to share how folks can get in touch with you if they want to continue the
Sure.
conversation. But any other closing suggestions, best practices for those that are out there that are like, hey, man, let's do this?
Yeah, it takes somebody who's just detail oriented and organized, and a partner. That's all it takes at minimum. And once you get started, you'll understand some other things that you may need to help you along. But that will get you going. And the last thing I will say is I'm going to echo what you said, because you took the words right out of my frontal lobe, which was practice differentiation. We're in a world of competition. And anytime you can set yourself apart from the competition, whether it's something big or something small, gives you a leg up. And so there are patients out there that will be attracted to your practice just because you're marketing yourself differently, because you're doing something that nobody else is doing. Or it's rare for other practices to do. So this is another way to, yes, it spices up your patient care life. It can bring financial incentive and reward to your practice, but it also makes you look different. And that can actually boost your practice in other ways. So to me, it's a win-win-win.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Dr. Chris Lievens, thank you so much for
My
joining
pleasure.
us on this episode of Akrinos Access. Hey, we were talking clinical trials and private practice, why you should consider it, and how to get started. Dr. Lievens, for those who would like to continue the conversation, reach out with you, perhaps pick your brain a bit more.
Got it.
LinkedIn, is that the
Sure.
best place to find you?
You got it.
Awesome. Groovy. Well, hey, to those listeners out there, if you found this valuable, definitely circle back with Dr. Lievens. Great stuff going on with clinical trials and private practice. And if you're looking for more great private practice content, whether you're cold starting, purchasing a practice, or just looking for that next opportunity to grow your optometry practice, find it all. Akrinos Access, akrinos.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on the socials. Until next time, Eric Matei signing off. Dr. Lievens, thank you so much for joining us.
You got it.